It's the second and last hour of Newsfeed PM. A very warm welcome. If you've just joined us, if you've been with us, thank you for staying with us. We begin here this hour. Correctional Services Minister Pieter Groenewald has told Parliament that the country needs 36 billion rand for new correctional services facilities. The correctional centres are overcrowded by roughly 46%, meaning there is an urgent need to construct a total 50,000 bed spaces. I'm now joined by Kgomotso Ramolobeng, chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services, to discuss this. A very good afternoon to you, Kgomotso. Thanks very much for your time. What is your reaction when you heard the minister giving these figures? That's assuming, of course, that you, like the rest of us, were hearing this for the very first time.
Good afternoon, Vuyo, and to the listeners and viewers at home. It was for the first time that we heard that. We are still, as the Portfolio Committee, waiting for the minister to appear before the Portfolio Committee and give us a conclusive plan. And what is it that prompt for him to even suggest that he needs 36 billion for building of new prisons? Because for us, it has a different interpretation. It looks like we're promoting crime instead of trying to mitigate the current challenges that correctional facilities are facing, or the current challenges that the JCPS cluster is facing in entirety, to also resolve on issues of overcrowding. So building new houses is not entirely, building new correctional facilities is not entirely a solution. That doesn't mean you'll not have overcrowding if you build more correctional facilities. But we're still, like I said, we're still awaiting for the minister to appear before the Portfolio Committee and in detail to take us through that.
But the extent of overcrowding and just how expensive it is to keep them there is really nothing new, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not. The last time we had an oversight visit in Gauteng, as the Portfolio Committee, we went through several correctional facilities in Gauteng, and out of them, we would have identified about 22,000 foreign nationals in facilities, which are, most of them are illegal in the country. And when you times that in terms of cost measures that the department faces in trying to feed or in feeding the inmates, it's quite a worrying figure that if we were not, if the department was not forced to it, possibly they would look at other avenues to try and mitigate dilapidation of infrastructure in correctional facilities, or look at other avenues to make sure that the living conducive of inmates in correctional facilities, it's humane and it's within the human rights condition. But you have to deviate some of those two issues of making sure that inmates do also have meals, and there's nothing that one can do. But it is a worrying factor. And when the Portfolio Committee appeared before when the department appeared before the Portfolio Committee, I think last week, when it had to account on some of the Auditor General's findings with their annual report, some of those were flagged. And those would have been the department is spending more money, which is spending more money on perishable goods and anything that has to feed inmates, but that goes excessively beyond what the department would budget for. For instance, if the department budgets for 10 million, they would spend around 30 to 40, which is money that they will need to deviate within their scope of work to be accommodative to making sure that inmates are fed correctly.
But then, if the minister's mandate, or the department mandate, is to keep inmates in prison in humane conditions, giving them what they are entitled to in terms of the law, there is or should be nothing inherently wrong in him saying to accommodate the numbers of people we actually have in prison, these are the facilities we would need. There is nothing inherently wrong. There. He is not necessarily promoting crime. It's up to the cluster to then deal with the other attendant problems that make the situation go out of hand.
There is nothing wrong, but as a country right now, are we able to afford building new prisons instead of trying to deal with current challenges?
And that's why you'll be able to say yay or nay, but with, what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong in him putting the facts on the table to say, if you want to accommodate these inmates in the manner envisaged by the Constitution and the laws, this is how much, this is what you're going to need, and this is how much it's going to cost.
Look, that's true. I hear you on that. Like I said when I started, that overcrowding in correctional facilities is not a departmental matter or an issue. It's a JCPS cluster matter. And we, like previously communicated to the portfolio committee and including to viewers in every chance we got into radio stations and so forth, is that once a person gets arrested, SAPS would be the one that arrests that person. That person goes through the courts, and then the courts will determine whether that person needs to be incarcerated or that person still needs to become a remand detainee who still has to appear court before sentencing, and therefore is sent to a correctional facility to be detained there up until the court matters are processed and are done. But in this instance, the overcrowding that correctional facilities is facing, it's on the basis of the influx of remand detainees. And these remand detainees, you would have those who have bail conditions of 100 rands. Someone is given a bail of 100 rands, but because of that person is unable to afford that bail, then you find them in correctional facilities. And I will make this instance an example. Like one facility in Colesberg in the Northern Cape, it had close to around 500 inmates that had bails of less than 500 rands, which we need to look into. Courts equally need to look into that matter. Instead of sending even those who have minor, I will not say a crime, it's minor, but you know there are those that you can mitigate, some are family related and so forth, but they end up being sent in correctional facilities with a bail condition of 100 rand, and then a person is unable to afford that bail, then that person needs to stay. Whilst the department cost on an inmate in a facility is 500 rand a day, and that person is given a bail application of 100 rands. So meaning now, the department is spending more on an inmate instead of that person being able to afford. So ours as the portfolio committee, which we have made as the recommendation regarding this to the JCP cluster in addressing the overcrowding, is that the courts, the magistrate, the office of the Chief Justice, including the Minister of Correctional, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Police, they must have bilaterals, including the Minister of Home Affairs, on how to mitigate the issues of illegal foreigners population in correctional facilities, because they also are part of the overcrowding that correctional facilities are facing. They must be bilaterals between these ministers, and who equally, all of them belong in the JCPS cluster. So JCPS cluster must start to deal with how to address issues of overcrowding in trying to mitigate the current situation we find ourselves. Departments currently are facing budget cuts. So in the budget cuts that department are facing, we still are saying we need extra money to build extra facilities. Are we going to get it? Hence I asked, yes, it's a relevant solution, but in the current state of affairs that the country faces, I don't think it is. So
the problem, sorry to barge in, I mean, isn't the problem the fact that all of these members of the JCPS cluster talk about but do nothing about all these issues that you are correctly raising, because the fact of the matter is that the mills of the justice system are grinding very, very slowly. The fact of the matter is that questions have been and continue and will probably continue to be asked, because no one is doing anything about it, about the fact that policing leaves a lot to be desired, about the fact that investigations, also leave a lot to be desired, the fact that the courts are clogged, and so on and so forth. The same issues or questions are being asked in Stilfontein, for example, that how come we have so many illegal immigrants operating there? It is because, in part, the borders are porous. Someone obviously or clearly didn't do their job there, and so on and so forth, which then brings me again to your oversight responsibilities as legislators, whether you are really pushing these issues or these conversations at least, and taking them where it matters.
We are, that one I can assure you, we are. And some of the oversight role that we're entrusted with, in some of instances, and I'll make this typical example, to show that members of parliament or possibly those who serve in legislatures are making these observations and coming up with solutions or recommendations to the department and the executive to implement. In some executive authorities, they don't take kind to it. So the portfolio committee can make this recommendation, and you find the executive does an implementation of the contrary of that, which when they come back, we need to hold them accountable. But for this instance, we do raise these matters of the JCPS clusters, because in parliament where I am, we do have cluster meetings, whereas as those who are in the security cluster, we meet and be able to engage on our findings of different portfolio committees and make possible suggestions on how to mitigate some of this. But whether implementation on the executive level happens, it worries us. And these are matters not, I would not say they were raised now. They might be strengthened now as I'm the chair of the portfolio committee, but these are some matters that dates even previous administration, which I was lucky also to be part of. So the stagnation of implementation lies somewhere or ponders somewhere in departments, and I will not want to caution blame on anyone right now, but these are things, like for instance, we had the AG, which came on the last week of November to present their findings, and some of these findings, you find that they're flagged. And you require the department to come and indicate. Like, for instance, us in correctionals, we then called the department, including the executive, which in the executive level was led by the deputy minister, to give us a clear action plan on how they're going to mitigate the findings that the AG has flagged, together on dealing with dilapidation of infrastructure, including facilities that are not operational, so that they get to be sorted out, which has infrastructure problem, so that you are able in facilities that are overcrowded, you are able to release the pressure and take to facilities that there would have been stagnation in implementation process of projects.
Can I ask,
those
though,
are things.
Can I ask, though, Kgomotso, why you are reluctant or apologetic about apportioning blame? Because the AG has been raising issues, but, no corrective measures, take place, or those reports are not taken kopdu, as people would say, to use South African parlance. If departments spend more than is budgeted for, if you have deputy ministers who have no executive powers coming to explain things, why would you be reluctant to apportion blame? Because you should be playing your oversight role without fear or favor.
That we do, I can assure you. And if you would have listened to or followed through the proceedings of Parliament of the National Assembly last week on Tuesday, would have presented a report on that. And in that report, we did name and shame. And a good part of it is that all portfolio committees were in agreement. And this means all different political parties that are represented in the portfolio committee, we were united on the recommendation was put to the National Assembly. The reason I'm saying this is that in our instance in the portfolio committee, you have a minister that refuses to take accountability of his work. He told us in the portfolio committee, recorded, that we must call his predecessor, who is the former Minister of Correctional, Ronald Lamola, to take accountability of the work. He is not going to do that. Hence, you have the Deputy Minister who comes leading the delegation with the department, in this instance, National Commissioner, to come and account before the portfolio committee on mitigation, on how to address the findings that the AG would reflect in making sure that the next AG presentation will not say unqualified audit, but with findings. It will be unqualified audit with clean audit. So that delegation was led by the Deputy Minister because the Minister refuses to want to account the portfolio committee. But this matter we've taken it to the National Assembly for the Speaker to take note, including the leader of business government, who is the Deputy President of the country, to then be able to take it forth in the cabinet meetings where the minister sits with other ministers. So that he then gets to be cautioned on this behavior.
As you should. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Kgomotso Ramolobeng, who's the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services. And just to point out, the Minister of Correctional Services did acknowledge in his response that in the current fiscal environment, it will not be possible for this 36 billion requirement to be made a reality.